Okay, today we're going to talk about the Servo Press Kit and the integration to a Rockwell PLC, ControlLogix or CompactLogix. And the first place to start with this is the Festo support portal. If you go to www.festo.com and log in to your country, you click on support downloads, you get to this area here. And the Servo Press for Festo is a YJKP. Type this in, select this, click on the software tab, and look for Rockwell. So Rockwell, right here. So this right here, you're going to download this. Okay, so I've already downloaded this. I'm going to go to the directory now and show you this. Okay, so after you've unzipped the download, you have this right here, this web release here, and if you go into that, there is application notes, which I myself have renamed just for my own sake. And there's an example, version 26 of a ControlLogix program, and source code, which is the import to whatever processor you want, ControlLogix or CompactLogix. So I am not going to use the example. I like to do my own thing. And I've tested some things already, so this is what we're going to talk about, how to build this. So I have a empty project here with my processor. I've got an L71 processor, and I want to get the function blocks into the code. So simply right click on add-on instructions, import. Now I'm going to go back just for a second here. So there's the two documents, like I said, the 160, 161. So right now, 100, 160, this document right here. If you open this up, this shows you what you need to do, front to back, to bring it into your code, which is what I'm going to do right now. The other 161 document here, this actually describes all the function blocks. You know, like if you get into here, it talks about just find one real quick. So this FB Connect, there's one function block, and it gives you some details about how to use it, and then it goes in the next block, and so on and so forth. So I have some other video already that describes the functions of the Servo Press, and we'll just move forward here. So I've already selected the directory, and I'm going to click on this and say import. And like good old Rockwell software, it will do what it's supposed to do. And select defaults, I'm just going to say create, and it will bring in user-defined data types, add-on instructions, so on and so forth. So it just brought in these add-on instructions and all of these data types. And now it's time to start using them. So, I mean, if anybody knows about anything, you can just, drag a block onto here, or you can go to the add-on tab and drag it here. There's always a couple ways to do anything. So I've already added the function blocks, and there'll be sample code. I'm gonna leave a link in this YouTube video in the bottom to the Google Drive account. So I'm gonna close this project down and go to the project that is just the bare bones function blocks here. Okay, so I've got a program here, and what I've done here is I have, as described earlier, I have followed the guide here. And if you follow the guide step by step, that's what you should be doing. I'm giving an accelerated approach here, and the sample code will help you a little bit as well. The couple of things that are mandatory is I don't need the status PLC. I'm using this myself as my own CAN routine, just for first scan bits and timers and cycle time. is this right here. So I have actually added an Ethernet module based upon the directions in the user guides, and the IP address is right here. So if I go to my web view, I'm connected to the 168.1.84 is my IP address. So I've got the 1.84 right here, and the user manual describes that you set up your instances just like this: 104 bytes in, 104 bytes out. You're not using the configuration word. Doesn't matter what controller you're using, you should be using unicast. That way it's point-to-point connection, reduces the multicast traffic, and nothing else is required here. So I've given this a YJKP_1 name, and part of the requirements is there is a data ref data type, and that has an X status of connection. And so I'm just doing some standard code here where I look at the status of this, make sure there's no faults. If there's no faults, then the status of the connection is good. So that's required there. And then with the AOIs, I've added these in sequential order of logical function, meaning mapping the input data. Let's just blow this up a little bit here. I'm mapping the input data. I am connecting to it, the controller. I have a manual mode function block. I have a press control, and then I have a status, and then a system settings, and then I have a read-write object, and then I have a map output data. So this is all I really have. Other than that, I've added some simple code right below each function block, which basically, if you ever get an error ID, it equates the error ID to a actual text, which I extracted from the user manuals. So each one of these have this. So if I ever get an error here, I can come here and get the error number, so I don't have to go looking into manuals. Okay, so that's that. So I'm going to download. I've already selected my, well, for the sake of showing what I'm doing here, like anytime you have to select your gateway here. If you don't know how to set up your gateway in Ars Linux, it's not that difficult. This shows you what I have set up. If you don't have anything set up, to close the RS2, which was what just opened there. You go to configure drivers, and you simply come into here and say, add Ethernet IP, hit the add new, and then you select this, and then you pick the network card that it's going to attach to and look out for. I'm just going to cancel that. And then once you've done that, you can come in here and scan it. I don't need this anymore, so I'm in the project, and I'm saying, okay, what's the path of the project? I've already set the path. So I can either download here, or because the path is already selected, I'm going to download. So I'm going to download, and I'm using a version 19. We all know that we're up to 31 right now, so I'm just, 19 is when AOIs were introduced from my memory. So you can't use these function blocks in something older than 19. So keep that in mind. And I don't really recommend using the Servo Press without the function block. So version 19 and newer, and you're better off. So I'm now connected, and I have my Servo Press itself. What I'm going to do here so that we have a fresh start is I'm going to kill the Servo Press power. I'll lose the connection here. And then turn it back on. Let's just do. So you can see down here that we have the. There's no way to zoom this right here, but you see the little yellow we have a faulted right here, and then we have a connection request timeout right here. So that's because the servo press is actually disconnected right now. So let's start it back up, and there's the web browser. Go back to here. So this right here, and if we look at the status here, so right now I've got an error. So only when it's equal to 0 will it be okay. And I have this timer here because typically on a startup, this kind of glitches here, and then it comes back in eventually properly. And so now that we have the status of connection, go to here. You'll see that we have an error here. So the mapping of the inputs, which I didn't cover, this YJKP_1 ends up in the controller tags here. You've got input and output. So you just basically copy this tag, put it into there for the data. So copy this tag, that's what you're putting here. And if you go to the bottom of this file, that's what I'm putting right here. And that's it for that configuration there. This system data ref. So I've actually, you don't have to do this, but to be a little more streamlined here, I've got a user-defined data type here that I've created with all my function blocks within it, so that if I want to duplicate this, it's relatively simple. So I have this one tag, YJKP1, and everything I need is based upon this inside here. And the system data ref, which is structure system data ref, that's what basically gets passed between the blocks. The input data gets passed from the input data into this data ref. That data ref is in use by every other function block, and the inputs will be provided to those blocks in that data ref. The same thing goes for every one. So it's the same data ref in all your function blocks. So that's not too difficult to understand. And then you have the very last one here, which is the output data. So the system data ref that is being, the data that's being used in here that are output data is being moved from the data ref to the outputs and then hitting the real world I/O and going off the servo press. So quick tutorial now. So we have this FB Connect. The whole purpose of this FB Connect is to connect. There's two different modes of operation. One's communication acyclic, one's communication cyclic. Cyclic is where your traffic happens in order to run the press. Acyclic data is when they want to read or write to an object or an array of objects, so on and so forth. And so I just backed up a little bit here. So we're waiting for the press to come into cycle here. Now we're online. You have a login screen here. The user password is in the manuals. I'm not going to tell you what it is in case somebody's watching this video that shouldn't be. It's the OK button, and now you have access to the other panels here. The press itself, we have a connection error here. Like I said, when there's an error, this fault screen, so it's basically, no connection established right now. So the enable, turn this off, turn this back on, and now we actually are connected to the CPU of the servo press. And the first order of operations, like I said here, when I put a 1 in the target, now we are in cyclic communication mode. And the X connected here, and the SI actual comm mode. So this right here, comm mode.0, that means that we're in cyclic. And if you read the manuals, you will see that first order of operations here is that you have this FB manual, you have FB press control. These two blocks need to be interlocked. The reason being is that, as I said earlier, we have the system data ref, which is being shared, and there are some common bits that are used by these. So, for example, this quit system error down here. There is a enable system. These are all the same bits. So, for example, if I come into here and I have this on, and the enable system is a 0 down here. So it's constantly writing the enable system to the data ref. If I come up here now and enable this one as well, and I come in here and enable the system, when I get down here, because this is the second order of operations, you know, sequence-wise, like scan-wise in the PLC, this function block here will overwrite what you're trying to do in this function block up here. So only when you disable this do you actually get the actual servo enabled. So now it's enabled. You see this system enabled here? So that's really important to understand. The other thing is that FB manual, FB press control, status, and system settings all are used when you're in cyclic communication mode. Okay. The last function block right here, FB read write, this happens when you're not in that mode, meaning you're in acyclic mode. Okay. So we're going to discuss the cyclic mode blocks right now, and FB manual. Let's talk about what that represents first. So when you're logged in here, you have this area here on the commissioning stage over here. Well, this right here is kind of a representation of what manual is, because you can select absolute relative jog, and you can jog it using these velocities. Well, in the PLC here, it's the same kind of thing with some additional features that aren't in the web visu. So there's this SI target position mode that is defined in my description text. 0 is for jogging, 1 move absolute, 1 or 2 move relative. You need a velocity and whatnot there. But the first thing you need to do is home the system, because right now the X system is homed, is off. So the drive is enabled. This abort press, 1 is high, it's a fail-safe, meaning it has to be on, otherwise it's aborting when it's a 0. So I'm going to hit start home, put a 1 in here. It's in operation to say that it's doing it. When it's finished, it says system is home. So start homing is it's a rising edge. So now we're home. Now we can do a bunch of different things. So I can put a velocity in here. I can say this here is for jogging, so I can say jog plus. See here, I've moved to 7.91. I can do the same thing before. Otherwise, I have a target of 15 millimeters absolute, because I'm going to go into absolute mode and say X move, and then it moves to 15. So we're at actual, so on and so forth. So that's how simple that is. And what else can we do here? Show you the relative move is straight up forward. Enable. Well, that's really all I really want to do here. So now I'm going to disable the press. Toggle that. So now I'm going to go into auto mode. So when you go into auto mode, there's a couple things that have to take place. So in your program here, you must of course have a program to run, because the whole idea here is that with that function block, we're going to select one of these programs and we're going to run it. So I want to run force mode, and the first thing we do is we need to select the program. So if I wanted to select program 2, see how I'm selecting 2? It's selecting it, and it shows you that it is actually well, it shows in there, but it's not loaded yet. So I actually have to load the program. In operation, program loaded, turn the bit off, and now 2 is loaded. Because I'm not using 2, I'm going to go back to 3, put a 1 in, load a 3, and now it's loaded. So that's the program that's set up and ready to rock and roll. And next thing we want to do is, not that, that's 0, is enable the system. System is now enabled. And Now I want to start the system, so we need to find that bit. Start press process. So I start the press process. It's a rising edge again, so I can turn it off real quick, and it's in operation. You get a result okay or not okay when it's finished, and so it's worth. So that's it. I'm running the press. There's a couple other things. There's some virtual I/O, which I've talked about before in the other videos, but that's the gist of it, and that's it for that one. There are some other function blocks here, so I'll leave this enabled because this is where I typically want to run some things. This block here is always active. Make sure that there's no error ID, and it gives you some other information here like system, automatic mode, manual mode. That's stuff that gets changed via the function blocks themselves. We don't set that. Tells you whether it's in operation, position, so on and so forth. Same thing with system settings. So the FB press control is basically using this right here and this right here. So if I start a press, go to the screen here, it shows you the sequence here, and I don't want that. I want this one right here as a reference curve. So it shows you what's going on. I'll just run one more press cycle here. Not fast enough, but here. So there's another press cycle. You got the green LED, so on and so forth. And while it's doing the pressing and so forth, you get this data here, which I've also discussed in other videos. And there's this interface diagnostics, process diagnostics. So if I go back to the commissioning, I guess it should have been really important at the beginning of the video to show you that when you go into configure settings, that you have to select the host and your communication protocol prior to trying to make it communicate. That's really, should have done this a lot earlier. If you wanted to control this by itself, then you're on the web visual, which is the default. So I've already selected that previously. There is a configure logging page here that shows you this right here. If you go to the function blocks, there is this system settings, and these items right here, like log SD card. If I want to log SD card, see how log SD card is enable SD card right now? If I come into here, put a 1 here, go back here, now it's green and it's disable SD card, meaning that it's active. So you can activate those things via the code. The reset statistics. So if I did this system reset right now, the servo press would cycle power. The reset statistic, cancel this. So right here, you've run a bunch of parts and you want to start over. So when you come into the reset statistics here, put a 1 here and a 0, come back, and it's just erase this. Now it's starting fresh. If I was to run a press cycle again, where is it here? Now it starts over at a 1, see? So that's it. So that's the gist of it. Now, that's all I'm going to show you here. So that is the basics of the function blocks. And again, one more thing to regurgitate here is the fact that this user guide right here is showing you how to install the function blocks into the PLC code. And this one right here, the 161, it discusses the requirements of the function blocks. It discusses what each tag represents. It gives you sequences because I don't have, I'm just flipping some bits there, but when you're in a real application, you need to consider many other things, you know, and it discusses step by step, you know, what. So this is read-write object. Let me just find one other one here. So here's the FB press control, and it discusses all these different general requirements. And then down here, let's just resize this so you can actually see it all. So it talks about all the tags and what they're for, error table, so on and so forth. The error table here is what I've put into the string. And then there's examples. So what you need to do to read press control status, step by step. What you need to do to enable the system, step by step. Disable, and it talks about all the function blocks. So it says, you know, this FB connect function block, what is supposed to be happening before that, the FB press control, FB status. So you need to consider all this in your code. And the next code I have considered some of that. So you've got a load program, start press process, step by step. It's a good document. This is what you need to follow when you do your real code. And so let's talk about my real code now. I'm going to go offline here, save it, close it. Okay, so I've got a different program open now. This moves yes program here, and the AOI program here. It's basically the same with a few minor changes to slightly automate a little more what the code's supposed to do. I've changed it so I've got some of my own bits. I've opened up my Datatype control so that I've got quite a few more tags in here. And I still have my one tag right here, which is for one whole servo press, you know, so if you want to duplicate code, you just, you know, copy paste, away you go. What I've done here is I've added a common, what I call common here. So this first rung, this is just for me. This is where I don't have to go throughout the code and toggle bits. I've just got all the bits on a no operation rung here, so I can see the status of some things, and I can and sets of bits here and so forth. I've got a mode select. Remember I said there's auto or manual. Auto or manual meaning I wanted to make sure that when this function block is enabled, that the other one's not. So I'm either auto or thing. So this common here basically flips the bits here, which I'll show you. There's a communication mode here. So when I want cyclic mode, then I set that in the control there, and I read the actual comm based upon what is written in the technical documents from Festo. I've got a fault reset, so that when I hit the fault reset, I'm actually going to each block and setting it. And before you enable a system, depending on the mode of operation you're in, either auto or not, you need to have certain bits and bytes set and understood, and that's when you can enable the system. And I guess it's probably hard to see this, so I'll just zoom in a little more here. So recap here, we've got mode select, which I'll show you in a bit, communication mode, fault reset, enable system precondition, and then I will enable it one way or the other. And then there's a home start and home sequence. There is a program number. If it's ever a 0, make sure that it's not a 0 and select something, otherwise you get a fault. Then I've got a start press precondition. Again, certain requirements before trying to start a press, and then start the press. And then I've got an abort, connection delay timer, so on and so forth, and that's about it. And then I've got some timers to initialize down here. So I'm going to download this here. Okay, so we're downloaded now, and the press was turned off, and now it's just established a new connection. I've got some code here to do that automatically for you. And let's actually run the press now. So as I said before, this one rung here, I'm just setting some bits throughout the code. You're going to do your own thing. When I turn this bit on here, this bit right here enables the system or disables it. The system needs to be homed. So I'm just going to log in here again just so we can get status. So right now homing is off. And if I come over here, toggle this, Control T. It doesn't seem to be, no, it helps when I'm in, my home sequence only works when I'm in manual. So if I hit Control T on there, I go into manual. Now this will disable or disable the code. And then home sequence start, it's in operation, system home completed. So we've homed the system, and that home sequence basically acted on the FB manual block here, this one right here, just like we did in the previous sample. And I have this sequence right here. So this sequence right here is just a step-by-step, really simple, following the manual. I have a start, I enable the cycle mode if it's not been enabled, and then I turn the press cycle on, see that it's in operation or active, and then press cycle complete, and then I reset and start over. So the way to get that to work, Control Enable, I'm in auto now, and the top of this right here, this one bit right here, has to be enabled. So if I'm out here, so I Control T this bit. If you follow the code here, I started the press, put it into cyclic mode, but then it halts because I didn't have the program loaded. So this is one thing that I don't do yet. This particular cycle here is to run number 3 press cycle. So I'm going to go to the AOI here. Actually, I'm going to go start here. I'm going to turn off the enable. I'm going to toggle this step reset, which resets it. So now the sequence has now been reset. Go to the AOI here. Come down here and 3. I'm going to load the program. It's now loaded. Go back to the sequence here. So now this is loaded. So now when I turn it back on, now it's going to run the cycle over and over and over again. So it's just going to continuously go through and run the sequence right here. And on the web view, on the operation screen, you should see all this happening. And that one bit here, if you turn it off, the sequence will stop. It gives you a chance to get into the code, otherwise it's being operated on. So if I go back and turn it back on, it quickly shows you what's happening. Only when you stop does it give you the chance to actually see it. So there's a typical sequence done, and then you've got your process diagnostics, your device diagnostics, and interface diagnostics for running. And that's about it. The sequence is pretty simple. Read the manuals, take a look at the sample codes. Now you've got 2 sample codes, one with base, one with 1 cycle. And then you don't forget you've also got the example in the download that you downloaded already, which I'm not going to discuss. That's up for you to look at yourself.